Long before the pyramids rose above the deserts of Egypt, long before Rome built its roads and legions marched across Europe, there was another story, far older, hidden beneath the sands of time. It begins in a land between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This place, later called Mesopotamia, would become the cradle of the very first civilization humanity ever knew. Its people were the Sumerians, and it was here, some 6,000 years ago, that humankind took its first bold steps into the world of cities, writing, and organized society. This is the story of their rise, their brilliance, and their eventual fall. At first glance, the land of southern Mesopotamia might not have seemed the ideal birthplace of civilization. The climate was harsh, summers were blazing hot, and the rivers were unpredictable, sometimes bringing life-giving floods, other times destroying entire settlements. Yet the soil they left behind was rich, and with careful irrigation, crops could flourish. Wheat, barley, onions, and dates filled the fields. To survive, people had to work together, building canals and dikes, managing the waters, and storing food. From this necessity of cooperation, something extraordinary emerged: the world's first cities. By 4000 BCE, places like Eridu, Lagash, Kish, and most famously Uruk had grown into bustling centers of life. Uruk in particular became the shining jewel of Sumer, with towering walls said to stretch for miles and tens of thousands of inhabitants. For the first time in human history, people were living not as scattered tribes but as urban societies. In the markets of these cities, merchants traded goods, artisans crafted pottery, and farmers brought their harvests. But as cities grew, so did complexity. People needed to keep track of who owed what, which fields belonged to whom, and how much grain had been collected. Out of this simple need for accounting, a revolution was born: the invention of writing. Around 3200 BCE, scribes in Uruk pressed wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets, first to record goods, then contracts, and eventually myths and prayers. This script, known as cuneiform, became the world's first written language. With it, memory was no longer bound to fragile human minds. It was preserved in clay for generations to come. Thanks to these tablets, the voices of the Sumerians still reach us across 5,000 years. They tell us not only of trade and taxes, but of poetry, prayers, and great adventures. Among the most famous is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of a king of Uruk who sought immortality, only to discover that life is fleeting and only legacy endures. It is the world's oldest surviving work of literature, and through it, we glimpse the hopes and fears of humanity's first city dwellers. But writing was only one of the Sumerians' many gifts to the world. They invented mathematics based on the number 60, a system we still use in our 60-second minutes and 360-degree circles. They tracked the stars, creating calendars and predicting celestial events. They invented the wheel, at first for pottery, later for transport. They built sailboats to trade across rivers and seas. They designed the plow, revolutionizing agriculture. They even created the earliest known law codes, centuries before Hammurabi. To live in Sumer was to live in a society constantly inventing, constantly pushing the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. Religion stood at the heart of this world. To the Sumerians, the universe was alive with gods. Anu, the sky god. Enlil, the god of air and storms. Inanna, goddess of love and war. Enki, god of wisdom and water. Each city had its own patron deity, and towering temples called ziggurats were raised in their honor. These massive step pyramids dominated the skylines, visible from miles away, reminding everyone that the gods were near, and that human fate depended on their favor. Priests performed rituals, offered food and sacrifices, and kept a balance between heaven and earth. Myths of creation, floods, and divine battles circulated, shaping how the Sumerians understood the world. Some of these tales, such as the story of a great flood sent by the gods, echo even today in biblical traditions. Yet beneath the shadow of temples and myths, the cities of Sumer were not always united. Each city was a kingdom unto itself, ruled by kings who sought power and glory. Wars broke out between Uruk and Lagash, Ur and Kish. For centuries, the Sumerians lived in a cycle of alliances and betrayals, victories and defeats. Among these rulers was Lugal-Sagassi, who for a brief moment united much of Sumer under his reign. But his triumph was short-lived. From the north came Sargon of Akkad, a conqueror who defeated Lugal-Sagassi and created the world's first empire. For the first time, Sumer was ruled by outsiders. The Akkadian Empire absorbed Sumerian culture, spreading its language and myths across Mesopotamia. And though Sumer lost its independence, its traditions endured. When the Akkadian Empire collapsed, Sumer rose once more in a renaissance known as the Ur-III dynasty, beginning around 2100 BCE. In the city of Ur, kings like Ur-Nammu and Shulgi built a highly organized state. Bureaucrats managed agriculture and taxation. Scribes filled libraries with hymns and legal codes. Ur-Nammu himself created the earliest known set of laws, centuries before Hammurabi's famous code. His rules defined justice, property rights, and punishments, marking one of humanity's first attempts to create fairness through written law. Under Shulgi, the arts flourished. Literature blossomed, temples multiplied, and the ziggurat of Ur was constructed, a massive monument that still looms in ruins today. For a time, Sumer enjoyed a golden age, a vision of what a unified and prosperous civilization could be. But the seeds of decline had already been sown. Generations of irrigation had slowly poisoned the soil with salt. Crops failed, and famine spread. Climate changes brought drought, weakening the land's abundance. Meanwhile, enemies encroached. From the east came the Elamites, from the west, the Amorites. Weakened by environmental disaster and political division, the Sumerian cities could not resist the invasions. By 2000 BCE, Ur had fallen, and with it, the last great chapter of Sumer came to an end. The Sumerians did not disappear entirely. Their language lingered for centuries, preserved by scribes even after it ceased to be spoken. Their myths passed into the traditions of Babylon, Assyria, and beyond. Their ideas about writing, mathematics, astronomy, and law shaped the civilizations that followed. In many ways, Sumer became the invisible foundation upon which later empires were built. Today, when we divide an hour into 60 minutes, when we measure a circle, when we write words on a page, when we live in cities with laws and governments, we are living in the shadow of Sumer. They were the first to build what we now call civilization, the first to show that humanity could create order from chaos, that we could live together in vast numbers, governed not by instinct alone but by rules, stories, and shared dreams. Their fall, like the fall of all civilizations, was inevitable. But their legacy is eternal. They were the world's first city builders, the first lawgivers, the first writers of literature. And though their names have faded, their inventions remain woven into the fabric of our daily lives. The story of the Sumerians is, in truth, the story of us all. For in their rise, we see the dawn of humanity's greatest journey. And in their fall, we see a reminder that civilizations are fragile, but ideas endure. Long after their temples crumbled and their kings were forgotten, the voice of Sumer still whispers to us through the clay tablets left behind. And so, when we speak of civilization, when we marvel at our cities, our sciences, our stories, we are speaking in the language of Sumer, the world's first civilization, and the people who taught humanity how to dream.